morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Speaking of news, yesterday the mother of all movie news stories broke, at least when it comes to comic book movie news. Although, it's not quite news just yet. It's really more of a rumor/scoop from none other than Nikki Finke. Remember Nikki Finke? We'll get to her in a moment. But this news is so big, so epic, it's made people so excited that that's what today's entire episode will be dedicated to. But of course, there will still also be the viewer question. And what's it about? It's about the future of the DC cinematic universe. But as I said, let's start with Nikki Finke. As you might recall, she is the woman who shaped the current entertainment news landscape. She founded Deadline, which really gave Variety and The Hollywood Reporter a run for their money. And then The Wrap sprouted up as competition, direct competition for Deadline. But Deadline has become a hugely influential brand in the movie news universe. And Finke introduced elements like breaking news, injecting a lot of analysis and personality into her stories, and of course was infamous for wreaking revenge and havoc on those that she felt wronged her or didn't give her the exclusive. Then, of course, she became a news item herself when she decided to leave Deadline, and she had a lot of trouble getting out of her contract, and to the point where we're not even sure how she did get out of it. And the reason I say that is because she's been largely absent. She didn't go to another trade. She didn't start another venture herself. She's kind of like in this gray area. She's like Yoda. She's gone into hiding, and we're not quite sure where she is, even though she is an entertainment news master. And she's obviously looking to remind us of that by finding out this scoop. What a way to remind people that you are still around. And if it turns out to be true, and I of all my time following Nikki Finke, I've never known her to put out something that isn't true. So it probably is true. She's an extremely reliable source. This isn't like some of the other online comic book movie news sites that I think, say something, oh, it's definitely true, and it turns out not to be. Nikki Finke, I think she really stands behind her stories, and this is a wonderful bit of reporting. And I wonder if Warner Brothers might have leaked this to her intentionally. I'm not sure what her relationship is with the studio, but of course, as I just discussed yesterday, there was quite a bit of negative publicity from Warner Brothers and their release strategy, and perhaps that they were in trouble because they weren't getting any DC movies until 2016 and no more Harry Potter movies until 2016. So perhaps they were looking to get this story out there that while you might have to wait until 2016 for DC movies, you'll be getting a whole lot once we hit that date. 3 movies in 2016 alone. So when is all of this going down? Well, this was apparently going to be Warner Brothers and DC's big San Diego Comic-Con announcement, international, Comic-Con International. But, for people in the comic book industry, it's San Diego Comic-Con, or SDCC. However, it is the big convention to the point where in the mainstream, it's just referred to as Comic-Con. Even though there are many Comic-Cons, this is so big, it just needs one name. It's like the Cher or Madonna of Comic-Cons. I think much to the annoyance of the other Comic-Cons that are also called Comic-Con. But anyway, you really want at this point to dominate that convention. There's a lot of competition for the top headline, and we saw a lot of competition last year. Of course, it was the announcement that Batman would be in the next Superman film. It would be Batman versus Superman. That was the big story. That was Warner Brothers' salvo. And then Disney, Marvel hit back with their Avengers Age of Ultron title, announcing that would be the villain in that film. And I wagered, I had the argument that Warner Brothers won that headline competition. I thought that the Batman news that he was coming back so soon, and that they didn't trust Superman to hold up his own film, the second entry. Although we're finding out this is actually not Man of Steel 2. That's coming, although in 2018, it's just a little delayed. Relax, and I think they might have done that to maybe make fans not feel that Superman was robbed of his sequel. Although, if your sequel comes, what is that, 5 years after the first one, is it really a sequel and your characters appeared in a lot of other movies? I would call it something else besides Man of Steel 2. But anyway, this was, apparently they were planning a huge blitz to not just announce one movie, but several, as you're about to see. And I think they truly would have dominated the headlines. And I think that this is not, to some degree, yes, their big surprise is ruined. And they might actually have to reveal details about this sooner rather than later, because people are going to be digging around like this for like crazy, entertainment journalists. All the talent involved here is going to be fielding questions on this news. So they might not be able to wait until, when Comic-Con is mid-late July to expand upon this story further. However, it also kind of gives a warning to Marvel, Disney Marvel, that whatever they were planning isn't enough to combat this headline. The cat's out of the bag. Warner Brothers isn't holding back. So Disney Marvel kind of now has an idea of the scope of the announcement they need to make. So maybe I'll be a big winner here because it's going to be like the Clash of the Titans trying to get domination of the headlines in the media. And it's just fun for us to watch because we read all the headlines. But who will be on the front page? Who will be in the elevators? At my office, that Ben Affleck Batman news, made it onto that little television where they play the top headlines, but I hardly ever see any Marvel news there. So I think it's very interesting. As I've said before, DC has a little bit of an advantage that their characters are better known. They mean something to people who don't even read comics. All right, so let's get into this news. I guess we've gone from just anticipating movies to anticipating headlines. But let's see what Nikki Finke discovered. All right, so this is going to be the lineup that they're going to introduce for the DC Cinematic Universe. Now, again, it doesn't start until 2016. Oh, yes, and there was some discussion about why the delay existed, why they had to push the movie back. Was it because of script problems? Was it because actors needed to get into shape? No, says Warner Brothers DC. We have to get such awesome actors in place, and we're working so hard to get the best cast together that it takes a while for us to negotiate those multi-movie contracts, which I think to some degree is true. So because the negotiations were so difficult, and maybe it was difficult to talk people into joining this franchise, we wanted those contracts to be in place before we move forward with the film, or at least have a majority of them in place. And apparently I guess they do because they've begun to film Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. So I think it's interesting that they were waiting on the casting, but yet they have not announced much of that casting. So we'll see. But I think that DC fans, I've already been hearing from a number of you, you're very excited about this news. So again, let's get into the nitty-gritty. So kicking off the new DC Cinematic Universe, Man of Steel was the official start. You can almost say this was a prequel because it's so far in advance of these movies. And these movies are going to come so fast and furiously starting in 2016 that I think you really can't say the DC Cinematic Universe begins in earnest until this date. So Batman vs. Superman is going to kick it off. Will their relationship define the universe going forward? We'll see. Now, of course, as we all know, there will also be cameos in that movie. Cyborg, Wonder Woman. We're getting a lot of announcements, and you'll see in just a moment some other characters perhaps as well. So then I said 3 movies in 2016. May 2016 will be Batman vs. Superman, or Batman v Superman. Then apparently in July 2016, Shazam. Interesting choice. DC is really enamored with this character these days. They're really putting him front and center in the New 52. We got his own little mini-series with Jeff Johns writing. Jeff Johns, of course, is a big heavyweight at DC. He's one of the upper management, huge head of story, involved very deeply in the comic books and the movies. So if you put him on a property, it's important. For instance, he did a great job building up Green Lantern, and then the movie threw it all away and flushed all his work down the toilet. Although he was on that film, so it's partially his own fault. But Shazam, I put a lot of question marks here in my notes because I think this is such a huge risk. It's like they're Guardians of the Galaxy. But Shazam, for those of you not familiar with the property, it's a little boy, Billy Batson, who is a foster child who harnesses the power to turn into an adult superhero. It's kind of like Big, the superhero movie. And I guess if I were a studio executive and someone's pitched it to me that way, they were like, everyone loved Big, including its semi-inappropriate risque humor with this little kid having sex as an adult. They're gonna love Shazam. So maybe they will. I think the casting of Shazam will be crucial, both in the Billy Batson as a child and Billy Batson as an adult. But if you can walk that fine line of the interesting humor of a child's mind and an adult's body, it could be pretty good. It could be interesting now that I think about it. But it's still very risky. And the fact that they would introduce that character so early on, and he's not as clearly defined as the other characters, is an odd choice to me. Particularly, as I just said, DC has a benefit of having well-defined characters that more people are familiar with than Marvel's. This is almost like out of the Marvel playbook. Take a character that nobody really remembers or knows about, forget remember, never knew about in the first place, and define them and make them a star and a huge franchise property for your company. So we'll see if they can do that with Shazam. So then for December 2016 or Thanksgiving, the holiday movie season really starts around Thanksgiving. That's when that Sandman movie is coming out. Now, of course, course, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is involved heavily behind the camera there, but he has not committed to being in front of the camera. I would be surprised if he didn't, although he did get some criticism for starring in Don John, and that perhaps the movie would have held together a little better if he just focused on making the film rather than starring in it as well. Christopher Nolan even told him not to do that. He shouldn't have shared that story, by the way, because nobody, who's going to question Christopher Nolan's advice, and then he turned out to be right. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt should have kept that bit to himself, but we'll see. I think he'd make a pretty good Sandman. I don't know if he has the physique for it, but he definitely has the fan base for it, because Sandman's more leaner, tall and lean, almost like a David Bowie type, and that's just not Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as talented as he might be. But Sandman, another risky venture. I was trying to read the new Sandman comic, and everybody made a big deal about Sandman's finally returning, and I had a really hard time getting through it. The artwork is beautiful, but it's not a mainstream conventional story. It's really out there, and it never even starts with its feet on the ground, so it's very hard for it to, I think you need to start in a familiar area to drag people into the right direction, but this doesn't do it, at least not the Sandman comic. Perhaps the movie will go in a more mainstream-friendly route. I would assume actually it would. But that's a very interesting first-year lineup, to have Batman v Superman, Shazam, and then Sandman. Also, that's bringing their Vertigo properties into the DC Cinematic Universe. Another interesting development. All right, so that's just the first year. That's 2016. Warner Brothers is like, sure, we might not be making as much money as you would expect right now, but we have so much coming down the pipeline that, you know what, we're just going to, see what it's like to be the other studios for a while. All right, so then in 2017, you have another 3 movies. Even Marvel really only puts, I believe, 2 movies out a year, if I'm correct, when I think about it off the top of my head. 3 is a lot. That's what DreamWorks Animation does, and they are not having too much luck with that strategy. If I were Warner Brothers, I would maybe do a case study of the DreamWorks Animation distribution model, because they are having problems to the point where, as you might recall, they just switched Penguins of Madagascar and Home's release dates because they felt Home just wasn't ready and they couldn't take another flop in their track record. So 3 movies again in 2017. In May, I also think it's interesting that they're not utilizing the earlier part of the year. Captain America found great success in spring, but no. DC and Warner Brothers are going for the traditional dates of beginning of summer, middle summer, holiday season. So in May 2017, we'll be getting our Justice League movie, just 1 year after Batman v Superman. And I guess that's why they're going to Shazam and Sandman, so that they can have, the Justice League regroup after Batman versus Superman. So we're getting our Justice League movie. Very interesting. So they're hoping to kick off summer 2017 with that. Then, of course, here's something really interesting. July 2017, Wonder Woman. They have thrown the gauntlet down in terms of female superheroes. We've been saying that Marvel really should give Black Widow her own movie. They should introduce more female superheroes into the mix. Sif is really such a sidelined character that I don't think she counts. We're all wondering where Captain Marvel is, aka Carol Danvers. And now it looks like they took so long that DC Warner Brothers is going to beat them to the punch. Now maybe they haven't announced all of their Phase 3 movies over at Marvel. Maybe this will inspire them, I'm using a polite term, to get them to maybe announce a female superhero movie to try and beat Warner Brothers DC to that milestone. I mean, that will be a historic moment, and whoever gets there first is going to get some major street cred, some major points from not just the fan base, but the mainstream. Of course, as you know, Wonder Woman herself is a huge icon to the feminist movement, to women in general, and it's a very big deal for her to have her own movie, and it would be fitting if she was the first female. I mean, I guess there was that Supergirl movie, but that doesn't really count. Poor Helen Slater. It was not horrible, but it wasn't great either. All right, so that's going to be in July 2017. We'll see how it does, and if Gal Gadot does a good enough job in Batman v Superman to make people excited about that film. Then, this is something else I think is really fascinating. For the holiday season 2017, we're getting a Flash movie that will also star Green Lantern. They're going to team up in their movie. This is a fascinating development, and I think a very smart choice. Obviously we've been wondering if the Flash will move into the cinematic universe, considering in fact he's getting his own TV show, and will it be the same person? We don't know. Maybe that's why this movie is so far in advance. They need to see how the television show does. Can they have 2 Flashes at the same time? That's a tough decision. This new Flash they have looks pretty good, but I don't know if he looks movie level good. Now, of course, DC is in love with the idea of the Flash and Green Lantern being buddies. The introduction to their new Justice League story, which we've seen now in the comic and in the animated in the animated movie Justice League War, and then potentially in the Batman v Superman or Justice League. They like to introduce us to the Justice League through these two characters teaming up and establishing that they already kind of know each other and have a relationship. So to create this team-up movie is a very interesting choice, not only because we have on the Flash side the television obstacle, but also on Green Lantern you have the Ryan Reynolds obstacle. Word is it will be an entirely different actor. I know a lot of us are rooting for Jon Stewart. I am, but I think it's unlikely with this announcement because the Green Lantern that's been teamed up with the Flash so far has been Hal Jordan. So I think the idea of a team-up movie is great, and I think that maybe Marvel should consider that. You don't have to bring the whole team together all the time, but maybe put two of the characters together. Just I think it was so successful the way they put Black Widow and Captain America together and Captain America the Winter Soldier. That was a great choice, and I think they shouldn't be afraid to do that with some of their top or higher tier superhero characters. Why can't you have, for instance, I think a Tony Stark, Bruce Banner movie, like a road trip movie, would make so much money. Make it happen, Marvel. I mean, the gauntlet, again, has been thrown down. A lot of gauntlet throwing here. Forget the Infinity Gauntlet. DC has their own gauntlet, which I think is just as powerful. All right, then they have one more movie they've said, May 2018, Man of Steel 2. Throw a bone to poor Henry Cavill, the Superman character. It's coming, but as I said again, it's so far away at that point. Is it really? How can it really be a sequel when obviously I think the character will have been explored quite a bit up to that point anyway. He's got to show up in a Wonder Woman movie. I wonder if they'll include the Superman Wonder Woman romance in their movies as they have in the comics. I have mixed feelings about how it's been going in the comics. I still feel like they seem more like brother and sister than lovers, but it's given Wonder Woman some interesting moments, and I thought their fight with not Jor-El. Sorry. Oh, how could I make that mistake? I'm sorry, my allergies are really bad today. General Zod and Faora. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. Okay, but General Zod and Faora, they had a great fight between Wonder Woman and Superman, and a nuclear bomb went off. It was pretty interesting, and I thought it was really well handled. I liked that. It was the first time where I saw a glimmer of what their romance could lead to. And we'll see if the movies can develop on that further. But I still feel, I don't know. I think the Superman-Lois relationship, Lois Lane relationship might be really tired at this point as well. This is a very interesting development. It's fascinating. Now, of course, some people were saying, looks like Kevin Smith's theory about a single storyline is incorrect. And I say, not necessarily the case. There could be a single storyline that threads its way through all of these movies. Now, of course, to some degree, that's also happening over in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I'm talking about an A storyline. Almost like in the comic books when they have a big crossover event and you have your checklist of comics you need to read. You need to jump from title to title to get the full picture of the story. And perhaps that's what's going to happen here, the way they handle their movies. DC, I think in particular, is famous for these checklist crossovers, and they can be quite successful with them. Mostly pre-New 52, of course. If you watch this channel regularly, it's no secret that I'm not happy with the New 52. But this is very interesting news, and like a lot of you, I get excited about it. All right, so that's today's big story. It's so big it took up 3 spaces. Now let's get on to the viewer question. Now, I am so sorry, but I saw this viewer question in passing as I was going through the comments. I should have copied down who asked it, but I did not. So my apologies to whoever put this question forward that I can't give you credit on camera. But at least you'll get an answer. Now, somebody asked me, hey Grace, how do you go to the movies? Because there are so many movies I want to see this summer, but I'm concerned about going by myself, but at the same time, my friends don't want to go with me. Now, first of all, you have crappy friends. I think it's a really not nice thing to do, not to support somebody's taste interests, even if they're not exactly your own. Now, I'm not saying your friends have to go and see each and every movie with you, but I would say your friends could take turns. I mean, I'm sure there are movies that you go and see that you're not so interested in for their sake, and I just think, I would keep that in mind when you're evaluating these friendships, because I think that I've had that situation happen to me, and I ditched those friends because they weren't true friends. Because a true friend just wants to spend time with you, wants you to have a nice time, and they don't want you to miss out on a movie you're looking forward to. However, I would say also, don't be afraid to go to the movies by yourself. I think there's a stigma against going to the movies by yourself. You feel like, oh, I'm all by myself in here. Everyone's looking at me like, am I that lone moviegoer that, has no friends or family? That's not the case. There shouldn't be a stigma against going to the movies by yourself. I've had to go a few times, and ever since then, it hasn't been that bad. And also, reviewing movies, I too have to see a lot of films, and it's hard to get people to go with you all the time, especially when it's a really bad movie, although I did take someone to see The Rover, and they slept through a lot of it too. If you haven't seen my review of that, in short, stay away at all costs. But anyway, I think it's, there's no reason you shouldn't go to a movie by yourself. It can be fun. You can sit wherever you want because it's just you. There's no compromise in where you want to sit in the theater. And also, seeing a movie, it's just you watching the movie. I mean, I'm sure you've watched movies at home alone by yourself. It's just as fun in the theater. And there's just something to be said, I think, for settling into your seat with your snacks, all by yourself, sitting exactly where you want, doing everything that you would like to do. And if you're going to movies by yourself, I think going in the afternoon is particularly nice. That way you don't have to have a bunch of people crowded around you. You're not, and you're not stuck, sandwiched in between a bunch of other groups of people. You just get to sit there. When I used to do audience reviews, quite a number of people went to the movies by themselves in the afternoon. It's a great time to go. So I highly recommend that you try it out. There's nothing wrong with it. You'll have a great time, and then you can go tell your friends, if you're still talking to them, that they missed a great movie and they should have come. But yeah, definitely no problem with going to the movies by yourself. It's not weird. It's fun. Get yourself whatever you want to eat. Sit wherever you want and watch whatever you want. It's a really great way to kind of like self-indulge. It's really nice. Going to the mall, it's a great way to spend a summer afternoon. So I hope that's helpful to you. I hope it encourages you to be able to see the movies that you want to see in theaters, for some of them as they're meant to be seen and need to be seen. Others, it's just sometimes fun to go to the movies, even if what we see on screen isn't as nice as we'd like it to be. So anyway, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of all this DC news, and if you think maybe the DC Cinematic Universe might finally be back on track, or at least headed in the right direction. And of course, what you think about going to the movies by yourself. Have you ever gone? What do you think are the pros and cons of going to a movie solo? All right, thank you so much for tuning in, and you can check out some more episodes right now.